Welcome back. Well, yes, as you see, we're focusing on some of those recommendations, particularly the media component today. We've got Sir Godfrey Huambonwa here with us. He's the acting chairman of BON. He's also the group managing director of Multi-Mesh Communication. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
You know, when they came up with those recommendations, some thought, okay, very interesting perspectives from some of those recommendations. How did you see them?
First of all, I would like to commend the EU monitoring team, election monitoring team. I think they did a great job. Why I say so is that, to a great extent, the report captured most of what happened in all the, most of the locations where election was held. So I think it's a great commendation. And they raised very pertinent issues, which I believe should form a basis for future review of the Electoral Act. And then NEC we use to work, particularly as regards to, and two, some of the issues that were raised also show that the EU did a wide consultation in the media. Not that they also observed. So if you look at the regulations, we looked at it critically. Some of the recommendations they made, there are 3-4 major things they made on the media. Now, despite the issues of the access, I would like to do that first, with the access of the media to electoral areas, what I mean, things happen on the field, the harassment of journalists, and non-access to some areas. It's during the election, you come in to monitor, they say go out, there's a challenge between us. So those ones, I don't want to dwell on all those.
Okay. You know, when the report spoke about...
Before you go on, just take this out of the way. The EU media recommendations spoke about the media, but the recommendations were more about broadcasting. That must say something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the broadcasting is the key. That's why I said, those are just by the way. There are 4...
Which we'll come to.
Okay.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
But when it has to do with, they're talking about electoral transparency and harassment of the media, which you spoke about, but I'm just wondering, if these recommendations hadn't come up, does that suggest or does that mean to you that we may not have given this kind of focus and attention, and stakeholders such as yourself may not have brought this to the fore?
Yes, it's not new to anybody. What I mean, since 1999, even before years.
But are we doing anything about it?
From what we have seen, I can't say things are not done, but it has not been done reasonably. There's no reasonable change, because up to today, we still hear media personnel, journalists being harassed. It's a major problem. So the report by EU has only brought to fore. And for us as media practitioners and industry, we think that one of the greater achievements or the take home for this report is to begin to push for legislation to review the broadcast code, the NBC Act, and some of the regulations that affect media, particularly broadcast media. As you know, in a democratic society system, the broadcast media is one of the most important aspects. Why? The media is the only avenue through which citizens, common citizens, can have access to power. Two, is the only medium through which they can air their view. Every Nigerian cannot be in government. So it's only true when you see call-up radio station that even a man in the remotest village can say something and vent out his anger or make his opinion felt and be like a Nigerian. So the role of the media in a democratic system, particularly in ours, is very critical. So I agree with the EU recommendation that the legislation should be reviewed and that
Which of the legislation?
The NBC Act.
Okay.
Should be reviewed first, because if you look at this, like you said, it's based more on the broadcast, media broadcast, which will go as we go ahead.
So let's now go into some of those areas. How, when they made that distinction between the public and the private broadcast firms, outfits, if you are asking that this regulation needs to be reviewed, to what? How should they reflect?
Okay, a lot of people may not understand what they mean by public broadcast. Who say, what does it mean? Public broadcast service, by simple definition, is a media, either TV, radio, or media house or company or association that produces content and programs or broadcasts not for profit. that is not gained towards making profit. It's purely for public interest, to inform, to entertain, and to educate. So the example of public media is like BBC, Voice of America, France 24, including NTA and Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. Now, what is distinction is that the public broadcast stations are funded by government and from TV license fee or by donation. They are like any church. You know, you can compare some of the church stations as public broadcast. But in Nigeria, what we see today is that NTA, all the state TV stations, I'll use that as an example, are competing the space for advertisement. They are, with all sense of respect and sincerity to those in the industry, are still a mad piece of any government in power. That is the truth. It's not nothing to do with this government, even government 20, 30 years, 40 years ago. So the act, remember the act was set up at different times. So the last review of the act of the NTA Act, or what established that act, is an old law, which was military time, before even military. So the change in the media, in the broadcast industry, particularly new media, makes room for a change where people like stations like NTA should be the proper mouthpiece. Their job should be to propagate government, policies, programs, activities, and also to release and propagate citizens' view.
But isn't that what they do now?
Definitely, it's not that leaves to be honest. What I mean, they do that, but they are not doing that in a way it should be. If you look at, let's look at the issue of, if you look at the commercial stations, which are there to make profit, their sites. I'm not talking this government, so let's not get that. All the while, whether it is NTA or any state station, they speak for the state, for the government. That's what I've seen all over, and we as politicians know that. That is truth. So media, commercial stations, the difference that commercial stations are for profit. The other impact why that regulation should change that, it is impinging on the business model. That's why it's difficult for most of the private TV radio stations to be profitable. Because if you're sharing the same space, if they brought in the same small advertisement pie, while you're funded by government, the other person is not. So there's no level playing ground.
So how excuse me, how feasible then is it to execute or to effect this regulation, this recommendation of the EU to establish a legal and regulatory framework that can transform these public broadcast organizations into truly, to use the right term, genuine public service broadcasters? How realistic do you see that in the near future?
Okay, my recommendation would be straight to tell you what I think the industry feels. It is possible. One is that to be able to make it feasible, like I said, the act must be changed. You're already aware that in the last assembly, there were some acts to review the NBC Act. But let me even tell you, what they should do is, one, our recommendation would be that the appointment of the DG of NTA, FRCN, and GM of all state-owned broadcast stations should be fixed tenure. Because we're not of independence. These people should be able to have fixed tenure where nobody moves them. Two, its board should be confirmed by National Assembly and State Assembly, not just the governor or the president, as it had been in the past. Three, the board also should be made of seasoned broadcasters. The DG or the general manager of this should be seasoned broadcasters who have requisite experience. And also in the board there should be leaders, community leaders, local government people who are involved. Fourth, the funding should be budgetary allocation directly from the National Assembly or the State Assembly.
So which one?
I'm talking about
the NTA. Oh, not NBC now.
No, not NBC. The NTA or the FRCN or the state. You have to discuss the state-owned TV station, not just NTA.
Okay, so these recommendations of you, does that subscribe to the school of thought that the NBC is not genuinely independent?
Yes, that's a different recommendation. But if I finish with this, I can also give my recommendation for them. This is my own recommendation for NTA. NTA rights and all state-owned public service media houses should be also they should be banned from collecting TV, from collecting advertisement, because that's not their job. They should be properly funded and have autonomy. And the fund should come from direct allocation. The chief executive of NTA or any of the states should be independent professional who cannot be run by whims and caprices. 3, the board itself should be made of community people and media so that they're held accountable. That is my own recommendation. Now, if I go forward to the one you're talking about, NBC. Now, if I go to NBC,
just of the independence.
The independence, yeah. As you know, broadcasting is a social enterprise. A lot of people would not agree with me, but that's the truth. Broadcasting cannot be regulated like any other industry. Why? The aim of the broadcast or media broadcasting is to educate, entertain, and inform, but most importantly, taking cognizance of social responsibility, religious sensibility, and other cultural norms of the people. So it's not just something you do for business alone. Therefore, and it's, like I said, it's the only avenue through which people can vent. So the National Broadcasting Commission, which is the regulatory body of the media, should be independent. And what are my recommendations, if you ask? First, the act should be reviewed immediately.
What is wrong with the act?
There are a lot of things that are not right. One is licensing. Today, NBC have...
We'll come to that part of the licensing. But I'm just, for those who are watching, saying, look, all of these recommendations, how did inaction in these areas, if we can call it that, how did it affect the content, the information that the public consumes in terms of reportage for the election?
Yes, from day one. So you can't throw them away. As a license, who pays the piper dictates the tune. So if let me be frank, if the regulator, okay, do not produce good media houses, if you're going to put rules that cages people from making comments. One example was the example of we're talking of fine or gauging the media. Now, as you're aware, today the NBC has the power to fine, to close down. Now, what that means that you are both the judge, you are both the complainant and the judge and the...
Okay, so part of the recommendation is that they should not be the regulator and then the prosecutor and then the sanction.
Yeah, there should be room.
All those functions should not be vested in them.
For arbitration. There should be room for arbitration. So the recommendation by EU first is that the licensing, that's what I want to go to, the licensing should be given by NBC. 2, that NBC should be seen to be, the license should be pluralized to take all shades of people. Today, you are aware that the license for religious broadcast, they can't give you a license if you're a Muslim and want to put a Muslim station or want to put a Christian station. Maybe you don't know that. But today, it's no more necessary. So those things should be removed. But to come back to your question, how does it affect the election?
Yeah.
How it affects the election that if the regulator is not empowered, not just for the commercial station, what about if NTA or any of the government station or the state station, all they do is calling you as Chamberlain, governor, not giving space to your position.
Okay, speaking about the licensing, if we could just perhaps, so you can talk us through these figures which you're seeing comparing the licensing regime here in some parts of Africa and some global. So if we could just take a look at that, perhaps it will shed some more understanding concerning what you are talking about, the licensing regime, those figures which we did have concerning the cost of licensing in Nigeria and the cost of licensing in other parts of the country, not the EU recommendations, the licensing, but take us through those particular figures. How much here? Why should it be reviewed? What's comparable in elsewhere?
Okay. First, prior to this time, the license review, the license of NBC is based on spectrum. I was listening to Armstrong and Professor and the professor a few days ago. Iridia. And argument was made. Prior to this time, licenses are issued based on spectrum under the analog system. There are between the 400 to 800 megahertz, license and spectrum of 8 meg each. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, they were charging 500 million, 25 million, 20 million, different paths. That is understandable at that time because today in Nigeria, we only have 4 major networks, which we all know their names. Why can't they have more? Because the spectrum is finished. You can't put more to it. But today, under the digital migration, they're what they call digital dividend 1 and 2.
So this is correct, isn't it? Yeah, we'll go.
Yes, yeah. So this is correct. But what they put is at every 1.5 billion. This is what they won't calculate. What NBC, if they would ask you to pay is $1.5 million. They calculated that too.
Okay.
That. So the point I'm making is that under the digital regime, the license should be cheaper, far, far cheaper. Now let me look at this thing on the board. This is an analog system. Where this 550 million, okay, was paid by one TV station using 8 megahertz spectrum on analog. Under digital, this same spectrum, what they are selling spectrum, is you digitize it, 8 stations will enter there. So by calculation, we should reduce this license by 8. What I mean if I use that as a measure, leaving out that measure.
But if we flip to the next ones, I look at some of the countries where globally, the standards globally. Guys, can we see the next one? So there you go. So this shows, I mean, look at that in the States.
Yeah.
They don't have all of this.
Yes.
It's been abolished. Australia.
Yes. Now, the reason is very simple,
abolished.
if you allow me, to define why we say so. One is that now, under digital migration, government, bear in mind that spectrum I told you, which are between 400 up to 800 megahertz, occupied by even the VHF less, even with the VHF less than that. It's occupied by broadcasters. The whole essence of digitization, migration, is that government, all the TV stations in Nigeria, we move down to 400 megahertz. So the whole of 700 and 800 megahertz will become free. And government will take back that frequency and they will sell them. And to give you an idea, this frequency which you have paid now 15 million will be sold minimum one day or so for 38 billion. Okay, so the government is making profit from it. So that's why there's no need for that to even pay that.
So one of the things that Professor Iridia, the interview you referred to, said was that, look, there even shouldn't be any charge at all. I mean, that it was too exorbitant. How do you react?
It is very exorbitant. I agree with you, Dr. Arabia and Professor very clearly. It's exorbitant. Like I've told you, there are many reasons. Reasons that one, remember the broadcast under Nigerian rule, under the new digital migration. Yeah. His transmission had been removed, but he's still bearing cost of electricity. Running costs of everything. NBC argument is that they use the example of some of the stations that you charge 10 million and what Armstrong said.
So does this suffice? Because even in UK, they charge based on what they refer to as relevant turnover.
Yes. So the option we recommend from that. There are many options to use. Option turnover, yes, use turnover. If you want to use turnover. But even that, for me, I do not even subscribe to turnover. I personally, and I give you a reason why I don't think so.
Why?
The turnover is that in business, turnover is not what you use to measure in business, it's profit. So not in taking Nigeria, you can do that in America where things are working, where there's slide, there's road there. How do you take turnover? A guy makes a turnover of 1 billion. He spends 1 billion in cost. What is he going to pay you? But see, that's my problem. But it can be prorated. My recommendation would be they should prorate it. Prorate.
How is that going to be structured?
Reduce the fee. At every instance, reduce the fee completely because you'll be funded by the budget. 2, NBC should collect part of the TV license fee. So, there's a license which is coming out. The
Oh, should that be NBC collecting the licensing
No,
fee?
so sorry.
Or
The local government should donate part of that license fee to NBC.
so what would the public service station be? How would they be
It's part of
funded?
it. If it was a 10 rand, part of that should be given to NBC. I'm just going to give a pie. If that fee collected by local government, part of it should be given to NBC. Part of it should be given for programming, to set up a foundation for programming. And for public service station like KNT, part of it should be given to them too.
So these are other comparison in other African countries now,
Yes.
to see what the equivalent in dollar denomination. So compared to
what is it in Nigeria? So look at it now.
So this is.
So if you see we are charging $20,000, and we're charging 500 million.
But is the NBC unaware of these information?
NBC is aware. I think what the problem is that they are not seeing it from our perspective.
Is it them or the law?
Not the law.
Okay,
No
they
law say
can-
500. Of course, it's in the power of NBC to charge 10 naira or 20 kobo. There's no law that says. In fact, some say they legislate, like those countries legislated. If you take this to the National Assembly, you pay NBC 5 kobo. Some of the countries is law. There's nowhere in any law in there that says we should pay 500 million. No.
So all of this is determined by the regulator.
By the regulator.
So should we have any cause to worry if we also think that, look, we're going to digitize, or we're supposed to digitize, and when that happens, how should all of this fit in? What should be the structure, the framework, and why haven't we gone that far in that process?
We're already going digitized. I won't say when. That's why also they are going with NBC. NBC cannot be trying to charging this money now. We're already going digitized. We've started digitizing. So that regime should start. So there's not a future. We are now. 6 states have been digitized. FCT, Kaduna, Kwara, Enugu, Osun, and what other states have been digitized. By the plan I meet to have with NBC last week, in the next 3 months, 4 months, Lagos will be digitized. Port Harcourt will be digitized. By October, November, Kano will be digitized. And these are the biggest cities in Nigeria. So this regime, the framework here is that the licensing should be reduced. Bear in mind also that broadcasters will pay the signal distributor for carriage fee.
So now that we have a new leadership in the National Assembly, what kind of consideration should they be giving this?
Very, very seriously. Our recommendation for NBC to the National Assembly is that, one, we're pushing for the review of the NBC Act. And some of the recommendation we're asking for, despite the fee, which is purely an administrative issue, is that the power to issue license should be vested in NBC. Today, it's still vested with the presidency. Two, that the NBC be granted financial autonomy. Three, to provide plurality and diversity in every state, the ban on license, as I said before, should be removed. It's written that that should be removed. It's no more necessary because under the new media, people broadcast what they want. In fact, I'm surprised you are hearing that. Four, the terms of duration of license should change. That is just 5 years. Another clients between 7 and 10 years. Then the broadcast license, which I said should, for terrestrial TV, what we have recommended us on our own was for 10 million, which they felt ridiculous. Then also the annual charge, as a charge which you didn't take note of 2.5% of your turnover outside this fee, should also be abolished. All right. So we are pushing that the National Assembly, as a matter of national interest, should go for this.
We also didn't. We do know that the broadcast medium cannot do any such thing as exit polls. The print medium can project because the code doesn't allow some of those kind of things. So it's a holistic approach that will be done on this. But
but also there are some other areas beyond what I've told you. The issue of gatekeeping.
Okay, which is another chapter entirely, but this is how far we can go today on this particular segment. So I'm sure the National Assembly will get some perspective as well in just a moment, but we thank you for coming on this morning. Geoffrey Ohwabawa is the acting chairman of BON and the group managing director of Multimesh Communication. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.